So welcome to today's deep dive. We are really glad you're joining us.
Yeah, thrilled to be here and dive into this one. It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. Today, our mission is to explore how a specific tool, it's called Pharmacist AI, is tackling what is honestly a massive agricultural crisis. It's developed by an organization called Soil Solutions Ghana.
Right. And, we're looking at why putting an AI chatbot directly into the hands of a smallholder farmer isn't just some, digital novelty. It is a literal matter of economic survival.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we've got some really incredible source materials on the desk. We're looking at strategic communications from the Chief Communications Officer over at Soil Solutions Ghana.
Yep.
We also have their internal pitch deck, which is full of actual field metrics, and some really interesting dispatches from the UN's 2025 AI for Good Impact Awards.
Which is huge, yeah. They were a finalist there.
Yeah, exactly. But, reading through all this, there's this one underlying hook that really caught my attention. It's this idea that it is incredibly easy to build a piece of technology in a vacuum. Oh, totally.
You sit in a pristine, air-conditioned glass office in a major city, right, like Accra. You write some code, you design a sleek interface, and then you just declare that you've solved a global crisis.
Because it feels clean, it feels absolute on a screen.
Right. But the real challenge, the actual friction, is getting a rural farmer who is standing on degraded soil to risk their entire livelihood on some chatbot's advice. How does an algorithm sitting on a server in that glass tower prove it actually knows anything about their specific 1-acre plot?
Well, and that right there is the ultimate trap for the tech sector. I mean, creating the tool so often gets confused with the actual adoption of the tool.
Yeah.
The algorithm is, frankly, usually the easiest part of the equation. We see companies constantly make this assumption that just because you have a mathematically superior technological model, it's just automatically going to translate into human behavioral change.
Which is almost never the case.
Never. And the stakes here, I mean, they aren't just about, app downloads or user acquisition metrics.
Right. When we look at the field data Soil Solutions is dealing with, we're talking about communities deciding whether a family eats, whether a farm operates at a surplus, or whether they're basically forced to abandon land that has sustained them for generations.
It's survival.
Exactly.
So before we even evaluate the actual AI technology they've built, I think we really have to establish the ground reality. Why would a generational farmer in Ghana even need to consult an AI in the first place?
Because they know their land, right? That's the assumption.
Exactly. They know the dirt better than anyone. But the internal pitch deck paints this brutal picture. It's not the same dirt anymore. They are battling severely degraded soil and, frankly, terrifyingly rapid climate challenges.
Yeah, the environment itself is just no longer behaving the way it did 50 or honestly even 20 years ago. The sources point out that the organic matter in the soil is just deeply depleted. And the historical weather patterns, the ones these farmers used to rely on to dictate their whole planting cycle, they're completely erratic now. So that traditional knowledge that worked perfectly for their grandparents, it's suddenly failing to guarantee a yield.
And on top of that, the traditional support system seems entirely ill-equipped to handle these real-time shifts. The documents refer to a, quote, low extension coverage problem.
Right, the agricultural extension officers.
Yeah, these are the government or NGO advisors who are actually tasked with helping farmers troubleshoot. But they're spread so unbelievably thin.
Oh, it's wild. Imagine trying to cover hundreds of square miles of farmland on a single motorbike.
Just one person on a bike?
Just one person. And for decades, smallholder farmers have been subjected to these very top-down, slow-moving bureaucratic frameworks. I mean, if a farmer discovers a sudden pest outbreak or, they wake up and notice their crops are turning yellow overnight.
They need help right then.
Right. But they might not see an extension officer for weeks. And when they finally do receive advice, it's usually this broad, generalized guidance that doesn't account for the highly specific microclimate of their individual plot.
It makes me think of an analogy. It's like experiencing a sudden, severe flare-up of a chronic illness, right? And the only medical help available is someone reading to you from a 10-year-old generalized medical textbook through the mail.
Yes, exactly.
When what you actually need is a specialist standing right next to you, looking at your specific symptoms in real time.
And that incredibly slow response loop has created this deep, ingrained skepticism. I mean, farmers have been burned by generic advice that didn't work for their specific soil chemistry.
Right, because it was meant for a farm 50 miles away.
Exactly. So as a result, they have zero tolerance for outside promises that don't immediately prove their worth.
Which means tech companies are walking into a total minefield. Their biggest competitor isn't another software platform.
No, it's apathy. Total apathy.
Apathy and distrust. Because if a farmer doesn't inherently trust the advice, they just aren't going to risk their harvest on it.
Which is exactly the point the Chief Communications Officer at Soil Solutions makes in these strategic memos. They say, tech adoption in this context is not a marketing exercise.
Right.
It is a critical risk mitigation strategy. A single bad prescription means a lost season. So any technological intervention has to overcome that massive, massive wall of earned distrust.
Okay, so that brings us to their proposed intervention, right? Farm Assist AI. And looking at the pitch deck, this platform is designed to be the exact opposite of that delayed generic textbook we were talking about.
Yeah, the specs are actually genuinely intriguing.
They really are. I mean, first of all, it does not require a high-end smartphone or a massive broadband connection. It's accessible via basic feature mobile phones.
The kinds of phones people actually have in these rural areas.
Exactly. And it operates in 125 different languages.
Which is massive. Delivering agronomic science in the local dialect that the farmer is actually comfortable using is just a huge first step.
Yeah, it takes away that translation barrier.
Right. It removes the friction of trying to translate complex chemical or biological terms from, say, English or French into a local context where those exact scientific terms might not even directly translate.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second for you listening, because 125 languages is a great capability. But language is only half of communication.
Sure. Context is the other half.
Exactly. Context. If a farmer is using a basic non-smartphone, how is an AI actually gathering context about the specific soil conditions on the ground? The documents mention it utilizes machine learning and satellite imagery. But, and maybe this is obvious, a satellite can't see the nitrogen levels 3 inches below the surface.
No, it definitely can't. And this is where their integration of physical and digital tools comes into play. It's brilliant, actually. So the AI doesn't just rely on overhead satellite estimates. It pairs directly with something called the ASASEPA DIY Soil Test Kit.
Okay, Amersa.
Yeah, and they're basically giving farmers the ability to physically test their own soil's nutrients right there in the dirt and then feed that hyperlocal data back into the AI.
Wait, walk us through that user experience. So a farmer is standing in a field with a basic phone and this soil kit. How do those two things actually communicate without, like, Bluetooth or an app?
Okay, so based on the operational models in the deck, the farmer takes a physical soil sample. They use the reagents in the ASASEPA kit, and the chemical reaction produces a specific visual result.
Like it changes color.
Exactly, like a color change that indicates the specific level of phosphorus or nitrogen or whatever. The farmer then uses a simple SMS or USSD code on their basic phone to text that specific visual result, that color code, to the Farm Assist platform.
Oh, wow. So the farmer is essentially acting as the physical sensor for the AI.
Yes. They text the code, and then the AI cross-references that exact physical deficiency with the satellite weather data and market intelligence for that specific GPS node.
And then it texts back a localized prescription. That is so smart.
It creates this real-time, hyper-localized feedback loop that absolutely does not require a 5G connection or a smartphone.
That's incredibly innovative. But, I still have to push back on the underlying premise here a little bit.
Okay, lay it on me.
Can an AI chatbot, even with a soil kit and satellite data, really prescribe a better farming strategy than a generational farmer who has worked that exact patch of dirt their entire life? I mean, there is a certain arrogance in the tech industry, assuming an algorithm just automatically knows best.
Oh, 100%. And what's interesting is Soil Solutions' own internal communications actually highlight that exact risk.
Yeah.
They don't shy away from it.
Really?
Yeah, they introduce this concept they call the illusion of tech adoption.
The illusion of tech adoption. What does that mean?
It's basically the false belief that simply building a mathematically superior tool means people will just gladly abandon their generational practices to use it.
Right, just because it's new and shiny.
Exactly. So they know that trap exists.
So how are they claiming to avoid that illusion?
By explicitly positioning the AI not as a replacement for generational knowledge, but as a supplement. A supplement for data that the naked human eyes simply cannot see.
Ah, okay.
Because a generational farmer knows the texture and the history of their land intimately, better than any machine. But they cannot physically see the incoming micro-weather patterns from a satellite or, the precise market pricing for fertilizer 3 regions over.
That makes a lot of sense. But still, knowing the data is different from trusting the data.
Absolutely.
If I'm a farmer who has been burned by outside advice before, getting a text message telling me to fundamentally change my fertilizer mix just isn't going to convince me. I don't care how much satellite data is behind it.
And that is the most critical part of their entire deployment strategy. They do not just drop an SMS number in a village and walk away.
They don't.
No.
Huh.
They actually deploy human community liaisons and trained agronomists directly into the field to work alongside the farmers.
Okay, so it is less like a tech overlord sending down mandates from the cloud and more like a local pharmacist.
Pharmacist?
Yeah, think about it. The pharmacist interprets the really complex lab results from a distant hospital, right? They explain them to you in your native language, and they help you figure out the actual dosage you need to take every day.
Oh, that is a perfect parallel, yes.
Mhm.
The communication strategy heavily emphasizes that trust is built when data-driven action meets the community face-to-face.
Right.
These human liaisons are standing right there in the dirt, validating the AI's risk alerts with the farmer. When the Asasepa kit shows a specific nutrient deficiency, the human agronomist is there to verify the AI's localized prescription.
They're the bridge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are the human bridge required to actually turn a digital alert into a physical change in farming habits.
Which totally dismantles the skepticism because the solution is co-created. The farmer takes their own sample, they see the physical chemical reaction with their own eyes in the kit, and then they discuss the algorithmic advice with a real human being standing right next to them.
It makes the data tangible. Moving from top-down mandates to verifiable, localized action is how you break that illusion of tech adoption. And looking at the field metrics in the deck, this human-in-the-loop approach is gaining serious traction.
Yeah, the scale they're aiming for is pretty substantial. The pitch deck notes that Soil Solutions has already supported over 11,500 smallholder farmers.
11,523 to be exact.
Right, and they've processed data for nearly 1 million acres of farmland,
Yeah.
like 996,703 acres.
That's massive.
It is. But, fixing a few thousand individual farms is one thing. Their stated goal here is regional food sovereignty. They want to move entire rural communities from mere subsistence, where they are just barely surviving, to producing a reliable economic surplus.
And achieving that level of scale, that requires massive capital. It requires the backing of international policymakers and huge institutional investors.
And those groups don't just hand over millions of dollars based on a few good stories.
No, they do not. They demand rigid causal evidence. They don't want corporate talk. They want proof.
Which perfectly explains the strategic roadmap in the deck. Soil Solutions isn't just relying on their own internal user metrics to prove their point. They are partnering with Innovations for Poverty Action.
IPA, yeah.
Right, IPA. And they're running a randomized controlled trial, an RCT, under their AI for Agriculture program.
And for anyone listening who isn't deep into research methodologies, an RCT is the absolute gold standard in scientific research.
Yeah, it's what they use for clinical drug trials.
Exactly. You take a large group, you randomly assign some to receive a treatment, and you leave the others as a control group. Because the assignment is completely random, any difference in the outcome at the end can be definitively causally linked to the intervention.
Let's be clear, though, running an RCT in agriculture sounds incredibly difficult to execute.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Right. You cannot put two identical farms in a sterile vacuum. How do you account for the messy reality of shifting microclimates or localized pest swarms? Or just the fact that farmers in the test group might just lean over the fence and talk to farmers in the control group?
Right. Hey, what fertilizer are you using?
Exactly. Information spillover.
Well, you're identifying the exact challenges of field economics. And the way you account for that messy reality is by scaling the trial across a massive geographical area. And critically, you randomize at the village level rather than the individual farmer level.
Ah, so one whole village gets the tech, and the next village over is the control.
Exactly. That prevents the over-the-fence information spillover you mentioned. The whole goal of the IPA partnership is to wash out the environmental noise and isolate the exact economic impact of the pharmacist platform.
Okay, so let's look at the numbers they're actually trying to hit. The pitch deck lays out specific mathematical outcomes. They are targeting a 0.3 to 0.5 standard deviation improvement in crop yields.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone who hasn't taken a statistics class recently, can you explain what a standard deviation improvement actually translates to for a farmer standing in the dirt?
Sure. So think of standard deviation as a measure of how spread out the harvest results are across a whole region.
Right.
If the average farmer produces, say, 100 bags of maize, there's going to be widespread. Some might produce 80, some might produce 120. That spread is the standard deviation.
Okay, so what does shifting that by zero point 0.5 actually mean for their daily livelihood?
It means a massive, life-altering leap in economic standing. A zero point 0.5 standard deviation shift doesn't just mean getting like a few extra bags of maize. It means taking a farmer who is sitting dead center in the middle of the pack, just barely scraping by, and propelling them into the top tier of earners for that entire region in a single season.
Wow. Okay, that really takes it out of the realm of abstract statistics. We are talking about moving a family from the edge of total crop failure to having enough surplus to, pay school fees or expand their acreage.
Exactly. And the pitch deck actually contextualizes this target by citing broader literature, too. Existing studies show that just gaining access to basic digital agri-advisory services typically yields a 7 to 20% improvement in farm income.
Just the basic access gives you 7 to
Oh,
20%.
right. Furthermore, adopting climate-smart practices can boost resilience by up to 25% against unpredictable weather shocks. So, Soil Solutions using this RCT to rigorously prove that their specific combination, the AI, the soil kits, and the human liaisons, can actually exceed those baseline industry benchmarks.
And this insistence on rigorous, independent causal data is clearly paying dividends on the global stage. I mean, the final source we're looking at today is a dispatch from the United Nations.
Yeah, the International Telecommunication Union.
All right, it's regarding the 2025 AI for Good Impact Awards in Geneva.
And Pharmacist was selected out of hundreds of global applications as a finalist in the AI for Planet category, which is huge.
It's massive. They are standing shoulder to shoulder with massive, well-funded global sustainability projects. And what's really critical here is how the UN actually evaluates these finalists,
Yeah, they're not judging based on the sophistication of the code in a vacuum.
or how sleek the user interface is.
No, the judging criteria focus heavily on measurable impact and long-term sustainability. Being recognized at that level validates Soil Solutions' core thesis, which is that agricultural innovation is totally meaningless unless you can prove it works in the field, under adverse conditions.
And that it actually improves the economic standing of the user. You don't become a UN finalist by keeping your technology confined to a glass office. Not at all. You get there by proving your model in the dirt, alongside the farmers, backed by rigid scientific trials.
Which really brings us back to the friction we discussed right at the beginning of the deep dive. We started with this broken agricultural support system where farmers rightfully distrusted slow, generic advice, mostly because their soil was degrading faster than the information could even reach them.
And Soil Solutions recognize that simply building a better predictive algorithm wasn't going to solve that apathy. So they built a system that relies on a basic mobile phone and a physical soil kit.
Allowing the farmer to generate their own hyperlocal data.
Right. And then they broke the illusion of tech adoption by deploying human agronomists to validate those algorithmic prescriptions face to face. That's how they earned the trust required to actually change physical farming habits.
And finally, they're subjecting that entire localized model to the intense scrutiny of an RCT to prove definitively that this intervention moves communities from subsistence to economic surplus. It completely shifts the narrative around agricultural technology.
It really does. Pharmacist is not just a digital novelty. It is a scalable blueprint for regional food security that relies on human trust just as much as it relies on machine learning.
Absolutely.
So to distill all this down for you listening, what is the ultimate takeaway here? I think the lesson from Soil Solutions Ghana is that the algorithm means nothing until it takes root. True innovation doesn't happen when a programmer writes a flawless line of code. It happens when hyper-specific, data-driven insights are successfully translated into human action in the real world.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating implication to consider. Because right now, Soil Solutions is proving this localized model in Ghana, acre by acre. But, think about this. If this RCT succeeds, if they could definitively prove that combining localized AI with human liaisons guarantees economic surplus.
How long until this architecture becomes the global standard?
Exactly. A blueprint for everywhere. If you can map and prescribe hyperlocal treatments for every single degraded acre, how long until localized AI frameworks become the foundational layer for all global food sovereignty? Wow. We are essentially looking at the early stages of a real-time breathing health monitor for the entire planet's arable land.
A real-time health monitor for the Earth's soil. And it's powered by farmers texting chemical reactions on basic mobile phones. That is a brilliant place to leave it. So for you listening, keep questioning the illusions of tech adoption in your own industry. Look for the human bridges that make data actionable. And we will catch you on the next deep dive.